Hello and welcome to another episode of Emily Talks Tech Jobs. I'm super excited today to be joined by Vrijen Attawar, founder and CEO of CareerSpan, a seed stage AI platform that helps professionals communicate their strengths through powerful storytelling and use that data to match them to employers based on qualities and not keywords. Virgin has worked across consulting at McKinsey, performance coaching, and sales strategy, and he kept seeing the same problem. Talented people were being underestimated because their resumes didn't tell the real story behind them. So that led him to build out CareerSpan, a new kind of AI tool that captures how you think, work, and solve problems, not just what's on your job description. So, Virgin, I am excited to dig into your approach. Anything that you'd like to add before we get started?
Uh, the ATS is a lie. The resume is a false god that no one should worship. Uh, Genuinely, I think there's a real I think there's two elements to it. I think one is the angst that we all feel towards this crappy system.
Yeah.
And I think that's genuine and real and needs to be addressed. I think there's also the just practical reality that the system sucks at doing what it's meant to, which is putting square pegs in square holes, right? Ideally. Which speaks to the fact that we basically have this like massive roll of the dice if the stats show that 46% of people churn within a year and a half of being in a job, right? That's like you've got a better than a coin flip's chance of making a good career decision, have to do that a couple of times in your life. That's, it's there's a lot of uncertainty, in other
Yeah.
words. And so, yeah, it's the uncertainty is not helped by the system, and I think that's what we're trying to do is affect and try to add a little bit more certainty where we can, especially around knowing who a candidate is.
Yeah. I actually love what you said about that. And just prior to us, starting this recording, I told Virgin that, and for those of you guys who are listening, you've probably heard me say that I hate AI resume tools. I hate them. I feel like they're so bad. Which is why I actually started, developing a system of my own based on my experience. And then connecting with Virgin, I found out that not only was he doing basically exactly the same thing, but he was like a year and a half ahead of me in the
Yeah,
process.
well, great minds think alike, and I think it speaks to the realization that there's the problem as people see it, and then there's the real problem. And
Mm,
one of my real gripes with tech, I think I am the byproduct of a lot of privilege to be able to like build this company out with the in the ways that we have, with the resources that we have. At the same time, I recognize that there are parts of the world or reality where the kind of folks that do that thing in a deep and meaningful way are not the kind of folks that end up as startup founders, right?
mm,
And so why is it that you and I as experts in the field feel like every product out there is shit? Well, it's frankly not started by people that have done the underlying work. Right?
great.
It's started by people that have had great careers, and no shade on that, but to have a great career and to help someone else build a great career, particularly someone that doesn't have the same privileges or resources or like advantages that oftentimes founders find themselves in a position, more than oftentimes, right? So it's just not like those schools of thinking aren't represented, and it's folks that are trying to solve the superficial problem and missing the real problem, which I appreciated immediately that you understood the real problem was the self-advocacy and getting folks to actually draw out of themselves the great things that we know are sort of inside them.
Absolutely. So I'd actually love to dig into that a little deeper. And you've had experience working as a career coach as well. So I think that, you've probably seen this with your clients just as I have. But I feel like, especially up until a few years ago, the approach around the resume was very much like, okay, this is what I have, this is what I do. I'm putting that on paper, and then I'll send it out into the
Yeah,
world. Everyone will
yeah,
be amazed by all of my
yeah.
skills and talents. And I mean, that is something that people did and worked
Mhm.
until, AI became a thing, and now it's very decreasingly the case.
Damn near impossible, one might say.
Absolutely.
I think you're so right. It's there's been a change. There's been a
Mhm.
change. I think that this is a great example of the, like, this is one day going to be used as the example of, like, oh, I used to just walk into an office and give someone a firm handshake and end up as VP of development for the Midwest. Like,
Right.
that does not happen, and we think of that, like, kind of mockingly now, but one day we're gonna be like, "Yeah, I used to just pay an AI to spam my, things," and frankly, that has never worked.
Right.
But in theory, you could see folks one day, hopefully, because we've replaced it with a better system, thinking that the idea of just getting ahead because you're spamming out thousands of applications is considered farcical, and ideally, because we've replaced it with a better system for measuring, was essentially what we're trying to do is measure human potential, right? And alignment. And so looked at through that lens, it's in an age of AI and in the age of all of this change, it's actually one of the most important problems in the world, right? Just because it
Right.
affects individual lives doesn't mean that that pattern repeating at the scale of billions isn't important.
Right, exactly. And so I feel like, there are kind of like two different sides to this coin. One is the mechanical side of, writing down the words on the page and sending them out. And I feel like that is very much what a lot of tools are focused on, just this
Mhm.
like mechanical getting it done. And I feel like, the tech bros who are out there creating, not, no offense to tech bros.
No, none taken, none taken. I'll describe myself like that proudly, but I recognize the limitations of
Well,
that
and I
tag,
mean, like you said,
Gotta
like the people
embrace
who
it.
yeah, right? And I mean, like, the people who, like you said, the people who've been there in the trenches with actual applicants
Mhm.
and, like, I sat in the recruiter seat, so I know what it's like to be on the other end of that ATS
Yeah.
and, be in communication with all those different people and, like, have that, really disappointed, candidate in front of me who ultimately didn't get the job. Um
Mhm.
as opposed to, the tech bro who's out there and who has had an amazing career and has hired a lot because he's been a hiring manager and is
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I know what it takes because I know what I want and need as a hiring manager." And that's not from my perspective, I mean, that's not the full view of what's actually going on in the system.
No, no, not even a little. So I think what you're describing is both the platonic ideal is sort of what folks would sort of conceive of. And not to say, but the reality distinction I draw now is, especially now what's happening is HR and the hiring manager don't really talk. They don't have
Mhm,
much in the way of a relationship. They don't have much in the way of
mhm,
regularly communicating, "Hey, what does it entail to staff this team?" Because again, per my point of the 46% of folks churning, why do they churn? 90% of the reason is a values, mindset, or soft skills mismatch, right? And so if
mhm.
you think of hiring as a funnel and you think, okay, the first line of the funnel is someone that doesn't understand the team, doesn't understand the culture, frankly, often doesn't even understand the needs of the job, not because they're stupid, just because they're HR. Why should HR understand engineering? Like, that's dumb, And one of the things I really appreciated about talent is, and what I wanted to illustrate was that they're in a really difficult position. Like
Yeah.
recruiters on all spectrums, they're asked to do this like conversion exercise, right? Of like, hey, this is who this person is, what they bring to the table. Let me internalize that, put that in a frame that is viable for the internal stakeholder, and then let me like sell that, right? Okay,
Yeah.
now that I'm defining it in these like business corporate jargon terms, you're like, oh, this is a serious process, right? Like it involves a lot of communication, a lot of consistency. And so, but in a busy company, what we're seeing is that the hiring manager kind of just wants to see good profiles, but
Mm,
they're increasingly being inundated with resumes that are either they sound perfect, but then the person is terrible,
yeah.
right? Which
Mm,
again, HR can't solve for that consistently, or the person is entirely fabricated, or indeed the person is just like not a good culture fit. But again, you can't really blame HR. So it's we just need a new way of sort of looking at the totality of who someone is, which is why I was so excited to speak to you because your tool also recognizes that fact and respects that fact.
absolutely. So I would love to hear from you, how you get to the bottom of that with your tool. Like what is your tool differently and how does it get to the bottom of, the actual essence of the person?
Yeah, so it's through that core self-reflection motion, and we specifically picked out a conversation type that I would say captures about 80 to 90% of the, if you want to think of like Imagine just a blob of information in your head, and that blob of information is like everything about the candidate, right? And then, or like a circle, and then there's a smaller circle in the middle, which is the stuff that's actually relevant to you, right?
Yeah.
And what we've, I guess, historically done is asked people, hey, you got to very precisely fill out the small bubble, and it's got to be super tailored, but also we don't have a great way of measuring it. It's just keyword based, so we're just, numbers game. We're just going to see who we get. Right. But what CareerSpan effectively does is it recognizes, hey, you have a lot to say about yourself, and there can exist these different combinations of things that frankly mean different things to different people, right? There's
Yeah.
different ways, as you know, to sell someone to hiring manager A wants cracked engineer to versus like hiring manager B that wants someone that's consistent from 9 to 5 and doesn't want to be a rock star, you know?
Right.
Like you have to sell them differently.
Yeah.
And so I think the positive changes that we want to see is effectively tools like yours that on one hand help people understand themselves better as we're
Mhm.
also trying to do, but then on the other hand we should have HR tools that are willing to listen to more and actually consider more data sources than just the resume, because it ultimately is an informational problem, right? You don't know what
Mhm.
you don't know, and oftentimes it's the uncertainties with the candidate that kill you versus like the stuff that you already know.
Absolutely. So, yeah,
Mm.
uncertainties on both ends, I think eventually can be a disaster in the making, right? Uh,
Right.
yeah, and, along those lines too, I was just hopping around your website, and I feel like I've seen a change on your website. So, previously I had understood that this was very much a tool, specifically for the job seeker, and now
Hmm.
I'm to your website, and I'm seeing that there's also a page
For
for
employers.
well, would you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's part of this shift towards, candidly, it sucks, as you know, trying to charge job seekers money. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. Nobody likes it. They don't have a bunch of it, right?
Mm,
Um, So long story short, we thought, okay, we're doing a great job for candidates. Average career span user spends over an hour talking to our AI. This is great. We want to keep this going. We don't want to charge people. In fact, it's to our benefit to keep the floodgates wide open, right?
mhm,
At the same time, we need to make money. And so
right.
what we're doing is going to employers and essentially saying, hey, the same tech that we use to help candidates figure out if they're a great fit for a role, we can use that tech and be a zero touch ATS for you.
Mm,
So effectively, instead of all of the crap in the middle around like looking at resumes and all of that stuff, you essentially provide us with your preferences for the candidate, both like hard skills, but also your qualitative preferences. And
mhm,
then as you have conversations with our AI, you will see a evolving candidate list. You
mhm,
have to have 3 conversations with the AI to be qualify for applying to jobs on CareerSpan. But
okay.
once you've hit that 3 minimum, you can apply to any job, right?
Mm,
So it's sort of
okay,
like an upfront effort to convey to employers, yes, I am committed enough to like share this additional information about myself. And I also tell employers like, oh, by the way, who doesn't want an employee that gravitates towards self-reflection, that gravitates towards, doing this high agency work that is not easy to do.
right.
Everyone wants that person. So I think oftentimes that's also the thing that like the folks that use tools like ours tend to also be the kind of folks that they self-select for like the kind of folks you want to hire on some level.
Amazing. And then I find when working with job seekers that they don't know what they don't know. And
Mhm.
that's something that I work with them to pull out of them to find out like what are those hidden qualities and hidden desires of them for their next role. That if they don't think about it in advance, they could suddenly just be confronted with it when it
Mhm.
when it like hits them in the face. And definitely when I was working as a recruiter on the other end, these were things that I was trying to get out of the hiring managers as well.
Mhm.
And I had definitely a process for that. And I'm just wondering, how you are with your tool, how you're able to get that information out of the hiring managers.
So there's one of 2 ways. The first is just the bog standard. You give us a JD, but we also let you record a voice message. You can
Mhm.
just ramble. Just describe who you want. We turn that into a rubric, and the AI assesses you against that rubric effectively.
Mhm.
So it turns your preferences and your requirements into a sort of thing to measure up against, and then it measures folks up against that bar. And again, it only looks at folks that have done 3 stories or more. So it's a sort of interesting way of knowing that the folks that you're looking into are volunteered that degree of information to share with employers, which is
Mhm.
awesome. The other thing that I think is sort of highly relevant in this area is it just that we are not putting ourselves forward enough, or is it that that wavelength that we want to be heard on is not actually being heard? And I think that's the second part of the problem.
Mhm.
Is HR, you and I could clone ourselves and have like everyone in the world covered with career coaching help. Does that matter if we're still in a resume oriented paradigm or a resume and video interview paradigm? Like I still think you can be evaluated by AI while still ending up with, first interview being a human.
Right, absolutely. And I think I started my journey with my product looking towards the future and seeing the system that we have right now in the recruiting and hiring space and seeing that there are these two very siloed ends of the spectrum. So on the one hand, companies are using their own siloed tools, increasingly which honestly makes sense right now, increasingly includes like AI powered products. And then on the other end, candidates are also using all of their AI products as well, which
Hmm.
are somehow thinking that this product thinks that the system is how this is works this way, and the other product,
Yeah.
other end of the spectrum, thinks that the process works this way. And there's not a good amount of communication in between.
Right.
I've talked to recruiters who tell me exactly what you said earlier about receiving like all these resumes that are just like made up basically
Yeah.
because candidates are putting their information into a system that's just going to make them look perfect on paper, which is great on paper, but unfortunately not good in reality.
It's so real, right? It's so real that like people are at the end of their freaking rope, and there's some bad actors. I think sometimes in the desire to make the case for your side, we like forget to acknowledge the reality of the other side. I think, you
Yeah.
know, it's worth noting for candidates like, hey, even if you're not the one screwing around, the broader context of folks doing this, is it fair? No. Is it something you should feel good about,
Yeah.
when you go to sleep at night? No. But it is the
Mhm.
reality.
Right.
And you have to embrace that reality and work around it to get what you want, which unfortunately means increasingly looking beyond conventional options like regular inbound, looking at, say a career span or looking at like networking or looking at some other mechanism. I think what's cool with us is we actually, in a weird way, are a good middle ground between networking and job hunting, where you
Mhm.
are actually talking to someone that then acts as a persuasion agent on your behalf, right?
Right.
In theory. So it's you have like essentially a career agent, and if you qualify, the career agent's going to go there and make a case to the employer for who you are, why you're suited. I think this maybe came up at the last time we were talking as well, where it's like, what's the actual thing that we're looking at? And I think sometimes we get so focused on what we're capable of scanning for that we forget
Mhm.
what we are actually looking for. So as an example, all this talk about like degrees, elitism, broadly speaking, like why do we filter by university, right? It's so
Mhm.
silly almost. Like, okay, it's prestige, there's smarter people there. Sure. But that's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, now we know that like 20% of Harvard's freaking legacy. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so when you like actually decompose it, it's like, what are we actually doing? What we want is an indicator of hard work. What we want is an indicator of high agency
Mhm.
and, these other values. And so what we're doing is we're using our biases and stereotypes and frankly constraints to say the quickest way for me to get there is to only look at Harvard people, assuming I have that pool, right?
Right.
So it's not personal. It is a function of like I have limited amount of hours
Yep.
and I will, as a limited biased human being, allocate to this way. But what we actually want is to be able to say, hey, this is my ideal person, right? This is, insert X person, he or she is, or they are going to like have these attributes and they're going to fit into my team in this way. And that's why we do it. And then as a recruiter or as HR or as any of these sort of talent intermediaries, you get the info about how to sell this person, right? It's not just, hey, here's raw random data and you have to come up with this narrative about why this person even should be listened to. No, no, no. It's telling you, hey, here's the narrative, right? Here's, or at least, hey, here's a narrative. Here's the strength, one way of presenting the strengths, one way of presenting the weaknesses, opportunities, and giving you something that is prefab that you can then just take the parts and say, hey, here's how I'm going to sell this person to get that internal alignment with the stakeholder, right? um,
Absolutely.
which is how we hope to get talent on side, is essentially saying to talent folks like, look, your life is hard enough. We help you see fewer resumes so you can spend more time studying these folks, and we give you more actionable guidance around what to look out for when you read their resumes.
Wonderful.
uh, yeah.
And, like, I feel like your vision and I don't think I've said this publicly before, but I feel like my vision for the future, and I believe that you share that vision, so let me know if I'm wrong. I
Uh-huh.
feel my vision for the future is that this system just doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
because it is so ridiculous that in the times where we have so much AI that can do so much
Mm-hmm.
work for us, why is company A, who is interested in person B who sent the resume, now going to send them to some kind of video interview platform in order to,
Mm-hmm.
like, get their insights from a bot when we could
Yeah.
just that one time as
Yeah.
employees or as job seekers and then get everything out there that we want one time and have that one in-depth conversation, and then the bot on the other end is like, "Hey, actually, I think you guys should chat."
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah,
that's there's a couple of companies that are trying to move in that direction,
yeah,
ourselves included. There's Bordy, which some of your audience will have heard of. They're
mhm,
pretty famous. I think the I think that's absolutely correct, right? That like we have to shift away from large volumes of anonymous, generic, mediocre stuff
yeah,
to highly personalized, highly catered, like, the standard should be no one else could have written this, right?
right,
Or
right,
now that doesn't matter if you Vibe wrote it or if you regular wrote it or if you artisanally crafted hand blocks out of like, Japanese wood. Like you can do whatever you want, but the ultimately, could your brain have come up with it, right?
right,
Or was there the information that only you had that contributed to that? Because that's the real essence of personalization. It's not actually the language, it's the ideas, right?
yeah,
And the actual language is I believe increasingly going to become secondary, which may have some downstream effects for like how we look at language, but I think at
mhm,
least in some senses is good because the again, the medium doesn't matter, it's the message.
right, absolutely, okay, same page for that.
Yeah, let's I mean, let's bring it down. I couldn't agree more.
Let's topple the system!
Let's topple the system. I actually I think it's a damn shame that more folks don't say that, because
Yes,
we need to the only way we can like make real big change to the system, because small change is not going to cut it, you know.
yeah,
The point is effectively that, right, is that
right,
yeah, we have to be mindful.
absolutely. Okay, wonderful. And then along these same lines, and I'm going to, share my ignorance here.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard that OpenAI is creating some kind of jobs portal thing. And honestly, I've been too busy to actually even look into it,
Uh
know what that is. So have you looked into that at all? And if so, could you share your insight?
Yeah, I looked into it a little bit. So I'm non-technical, but to the best of my understanding, I think there's a world in which OpenAI could serve that need. They could solve any problem if they want. They have the money and the resources.
Right.
The reason why I don't think they're going to solve that particular problem, even though it's huge, is because to do that, you would need a user experience that is not just a chatbot. So
Hmm.
in a world where OpenAI is coming for every business and creating a specialized UX that is suited for that business, sure. What OpenAI is betting is that your baseline use of ChatGPT is enough to, and therefore your memories are enough to match you. In theory, yes, but there again, we face the same problem where not everyone is showing their best selves to their AI. And most people
Absolutely.
exactly. And most
Mhm,
people don't know how to show their best selves. All of a sudden, what? I gotta be mindful of what my employer might hear or see,
mhm,
if just in my day-to-day use of ChatGPT. I don't think there's a viable way for them to execute on that because job searching and careers it's a UX problem. It's not
mm,
a technical problem because if you unless you build a UX to also help people be better self-advocates,
mhm.
you're not really gonna succeed there. So frankly, they should just buy CareerSpan, which would be a much Sam, if you're listening,
All right.
I have the answer for you. You just need to give me a call, buddy.
Should we go after them? I
Yeah, exactly.
this. I think, like,
Yeah,
together we're the dream team, Bridget.
I think we could do it. I think we could do it. I'll move down to
Let's
Mexico. We'll
follow the
get a
system.
accelerator on the beach. It'll be great.
Okay, great. Okay, so, you said something to me that was really interesting around UX, and this is a question that I have, and I hope this is interesting for the job seekers
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But, I've kind of been asking myself the same question because, my strategy, I've had kind of iterations with this. I started out
Mhm,
just doing reverse recruiting, and that was like just right at the beginning of,
mhm,
when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. So it was limited in what it did. So I actually had the luxury, and I'm gonna say
mhm,
luxury of having done this manually because I
mm.
was forced to use my brain to understand, like, what this whole process is and compartmentalize it and break
Yep,
it down into little bits of operation. And also, on the other hand, like be talking to the human and getting those, bits
right,
of information that quite frankly we're missing out of this human being.
right,
And
right.
then, transitioning to the use of, once the models were, in my opinion, good enough to be able to get consistent with the custom GPT, which did kind of, have those
That was
guardrails and
a
those
bridge step,
constraints
yeah.
for my clients. One of the things that I've been struggling with around
Mhm.
UX is people have very short attention spans.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Which is
yeah.
why I feel like some of these products that are out there are so successful. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
name names, but basically you go into this system, and a lot of my clients have used these and told me like, "This is really bad. I don't get any results
Oh,
from this."
yeah.
You
Oh, yeah.
upload your resume that you made, fantastic, and then you put the link to your job description that you wanna apply for, and it just makes something up.
It just
And
makes
there
something up.
it makes something up, and then, the problem there is that this tool just simply doesn't have enough information about you. But number 1, I feel like the creators of these tools don't care
No, they don't.
because they wanna sell product, and then number 2, the users don't understand that what's missing there is data.
Yeah.
So, like, if they're willing to spend that hour, like you said,
Mhm.
chatting with the bot and getting that really rich data set into the tool, the results will be authentic, they will
Yeah.
be accurate, and they will be aligned with what it is that they're looking for. But I feel like coming back to UX, I feel like, there's probably a bit of an educational curve when it comes to users around what it takes to make that system work well for them, which unfortunately is more than just that, 2-second upload that they do. It's
Yeah.
gonna take them the hour to get that
It's
done.
gonna take them the hour, and that was a huge I'm glad you brought that up because that was a huge decision we had to take early on in the process was how much friction do we add? And we ultimately came down on the side of like, you know what? The friction is the point. The friction is the point, right? And so for the folks that don't get the friction is the point, you almost don't even want to sell to them because
Right.
they have a whole journey to go on before they realize that. I think the good thing is the folks that are at least willing to take it on faith and try the tool. Because I want to be fair to like the average consumer as well. There's a lot of people asking for your attention. Tool that rocks up and says, "Hey, reflect for 20 minutes and we'll see what we get," is a hard thing, right? And I think that's
Yes.
why I am so proud of like the progress that we've made because I think for the most part we have actually overcome that. But yeah, to get folks to get in the mindset to be psychologically comfortable enough to both loosen up enough to share and for them to feel comfortable enough to like be willing to even articulate that, right?
Mm,
Because
mm,
even if they know deep down, oftentimes there's so many layers of like, I'm not good enough. I don't want to. The interesting thing that we heard a few months in was actually folks saying it's easier to talk to the AI because I feel less judged than if it was a person, but I get the same, like, kind of ostensibly warm response,
right.
right? In
Yeah.
which case, it's almost like the person is it's not the person sat opposite you, it is the effect that is created by the experience, right? That
Mhm.
is truly what matters. And so I think UX that can solve that, that is designed to make someone comfortable, situate them, give them a preview of what value they're going to get as a result of engaging in this exercise. And then with all of that situating, then toss them into a situation where they can reflect on stuff.
Right.
So it's yeah, it looks like a simple chatbot from the outside, but like, it's truly so interesting the amount of thought you can put into things like this.
Absolutely, and I feel like, quite honestly, I'm not out here, like, developing my own AI
Mhm.
model, like, that's not my
Yeah.
superpower. So my
Yeah.
superpower is understanding the problem and using the tools available to
Yeah.
create a solution that uses the tech and
Yeah.
meets people where they need support. Have you gotten any pushback? I don't wanna ask you, I don't wanna out you on, like, what you're built on.
Yeah, for sure.
But have you gotten any pushback from people around like, "Oh, yeah, I could just build this out myself in
Oh,
ChatGPT
all
or
the
in
time.
whatever."
All the time, and usually they're not people worth spending a ton of time on. Sure, I think the fact that it is obviously incumbent upon on the founder to convey things in a manner that is like compelling and appealing to the audience, sure. But I would actually say we have had so much more success going to workforce development, going to individual people on LinkedIn that are like talking about the issues. Like it's so much more powerful to go to those folks instead of this mass broad kind of thing. Because they will be more keen on funding your product or being your customers because they
Mm,
get the problem in a
right.
way that a VC is applying an analytical layer. And they're also like, these are people that are like winners in life. Like they've
Mm,
like, not to say that it's like an entitlement thing. It's like they've clearly done very well in life,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're not people that struggle with self-advocacy, by and
Mm,
large. They're
mm,
not people that struggle to put themselves forward. Even if they came from an underprivileged background, they cannot relate to someone that would not just, like, go out there and do something and put themselves forward.
mm,
And that's awesome. I think in many ways that's an admirable thing, and I think the thing that we want is for everyone to feel empowered that way to the extent that we can help them. But they can't relate to this idea that like what you actually need is the coaching and not the resume. Because
right,
for them all they've ever needed is the resume. Right? So
right.
they're like, what are you talking to me about? Like reflecting, like I just show up and people give me the job. So it's
Yeah,
like again, very like circa, walk in with a firm handshake, but like millennial edition.
right.
Uh,
And I
yeah.
mean, for them, the resume is the pain point, and for the rest of us, I was just coaching a group last night, and one of the people in the group actually didn't even have, like, a LinkedIn profile, and,
Oh,
like, you're
wow.
looking for a job in tech right now, you gotta play the game.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You
yeah. It's you have to play the game, and I think there's a genuine discussion to be had around whether the game is a good game in the first place, and I appreciate you sort of like bringing that up, right? That the whole
mm,
system is absolutely screwed. But until we change all of it, I think we have to adapt to the realities of where it is right now. And I think
right.
that's where I sometimes like lose job seekers or they lose me, where it's like, look, I get it. It sucks. Like, I wish I wish it was not me, a person that's had a much easier time oftentimes comparatively telling you that.
Mm,
But to the extent that you feel comfortable, I always encourage people to like identify, okay, what are truly the limits of your comfortability, right?
right.
Like, are you not networking because you feel shy and insecure and like because if that's the thing, like sucks, but like that's something you either have to overcome or you have to deal with it, or you're making a decision that, hey, I am choosing to stay within my comfort zone, and I accept that that is like a life choice that I am making. I have a friend who is one of the most freaking brilliant people I've ever met, but she has a sleep disorder, can't wake up before noon, right?
Mm,
And she has to work remote again for like a variety of reasons. So, you know, she's absolute rock star, but she's like, my health matters. This matters. This matters. These are things I'm willing to compromise. She's working somewhere that is like beyond lucky to have her just because of those constraints, right? So
mhm.
I would say it's like, you know, a little bit of like a little bit of a tough love sort of thing, but also a little bit of like a, hey, we're all having to do it in our own ways, you know? So don't feel bad that you have to like bend. Unfortunately, not all of us can tell reality to take it, you know? Most of
Yeah,
us are takers when it comes to reality, and that's okay.
that is okay. And, same page. This is why I love these conversations with you, Bridget. I feel like the words you're saying could just be coming out of my mouth. It's like
I know, and likewise, it's so fun, and I rarely meet someone that like even within like a pretty small circle that I keep, it's like really nice to find someone that is like thinking the same stuff.
the
I'm excited to
appreciation.
introduce her to Logan. She will also have a great mind meld with you. She'll
I
actually sort
can't
of
wait.
probably, yeah, yeah. I think you'd love chatting with her. I'll
Okay,
bring her onto a call at some point.
awesome. Are you a little bit flexible on time?
Yeah, 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 totally.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm wanting to talk a little bit talk directly to job seekers now
Mhm.
before
Mhm.
we go to our hot take. And I know you've got
Yeah.
a spicy one, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
just you personally right now, if you have the stage and you're able to say whatever you want to job seekers right now, whether they're career span users or not. What are a couple of things that you would like them to hear that would help them succeed in their search?
Great question, and probably the most important question that we're gonna discuss today, right? I think if I try to go for the advice that I hear less often, but I consider super important, I know one thing that you clearly emphasize because you broke down your three stages is that starting discovery self-understanding stage.
Right.
Um,
And
that is
actually,
so important.
if I may,
Uh,
I could just can I break that down
yeah,
real
yeah, yeah. Please, please, yeah. If you could illustrate that.
everybody who's out there listening, according to Emily, so this is my
Yeah.
self-created system. There are 3 stages to the job search process, right? Stage 1 is the discovery phase, which I like to also call, "What do I wanna be when I grow up?" We're figuring out what it is that we want. And then
Yep.
stage 2 is the alignment phase. So once I know what I want, I'm gonna go out into the world and get some data, look at those job descriptions, talk to people in the industry, and see what they want from me, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna align my messaging to that and basically be able to give them what they want. And then once I've done that in stage 3, it's go time. Then we're applying our search strategy and doing the networking, which we're doing all the time, by the way. But we're
Hmm.
like getting it done. So those are
Right.
the stages that Bridget and I talked about that he's referring to right now.
Right, exactly. And you were mentioning that you specialize in like different parts of that stage, 2 and 3 specifically, if
Alignment.
I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
Most folks, and I, for the record, I'm sure you have a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons why I understand is because most folks are just want to skip 1 and get straight to 2 and 3, right? Like there's
Or
a
just
huge
go to 3.
rush.
They don't wanna
Yeah,
do
or just
3
go to 3. Yeah, people just want to be at 3. They want to, so like I want the audience to take a second, think about the last job search you did, and tell me how many of these like things I got right. So you didn't update your resume for months.
Mm,
Definitely not after the last big win you had.
right.
Most likely, the last resume update you had was either your previous job search, or if you were up for an award or you needed it for your performance review. Most folks haven't touched it, right? So, congratulations. You've entered the best circumstances to reflect on your experience. Now, I'm like stressed. I want a job. It feels icky and uncomfortable looking at my resume. So I think to myself, okay, well, let's just like apply. So I apply to 100 places, right? Then I think, oh, let me use my network. I spam 100 people in my network, burning every quality like lead that I have at the outset when I am least ready. So all of these habits come from the
Mhm.
same place, which is I didn't sit down and have the conversation that I love how you described. What do I want to be when I grow up? And the related conversations. Who the hell am I now as a baby, to follow your metaphor, right? Or like as a toddler, right? Where am I now? What are the things I like? What are the things I dislike? One of the things I love about CareerSpan is that we help you figure that out indirectly. has
Mm.
always been my philosophy. So it's like don't look straight at it. Like don't ask me to look straight at the thing that I like. Ask me to look like just to the side. So if I describe things I like doing, then you can find the commonalities there and say, okay, based on these things that you like doing, this is something for you,
Yeah.
right? And so you can only do these sort of things and get so even though it's incredibly time consuming and feels not worth it, it's actually the most worth it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is more broadly, and this is also something you touched on when you said you keep doing it, is working on your career at the right time, which is unfortunately a little bit all the time, as
Mm.
opposed to a lot of it at the end of a job, like, at the end of
Right.
employment when you're like stressed and unhappy, right? A
Yeah.
little bit over time will be so much better for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then the other thing I would also say is like if you feel like you are going to job search within the next year for whatever reason, which again I think is a standard that most people would put most people in the bucket of okay, I should be working on my career a little bit. If
Yeah.
that applies to you at all, start by just noting your stuff down, right? Start
Right.
by like, just even just like making a list of like what are cool things I did this year so that you can use like your tool or CareerSpan or even just like basic self-reflection to work on that later. But
Yeah.
that's really where you want to start.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good career hygiene, guys. Just like flossing, make it
Yes.
like every 6 to 12 months thing. You got to do it.
You gotta do it, right? And your future you will thank you for it, which is frankly never a good enough reason to do things. So I will say, it's hard to understand how much your future you will thank you for it because you've never done it before. Because none of us have ever done it before, right? Realistically, we don't do it because we're always reacting to the job search. And I
Yeah.
think part of that like point that was made around like what could be a better world. I think a better world is one where it becomes more seamless. The act of thinking about your performance, working on your career, and theoretically applying to a job, all three should be one thing, which is just reflecting. Is sort
Right.
of my like platonic ideal of the world. It's
Yeah.
just you reflect on the things that you've done, you provide your perspective, it gets cross correlated with what other people say about you, and you have this like sense of like, this is what Emily says she's about, this is what other people say to fill in that picture, this is the
Mm.
reality in the middle, and like and that's just always on, so everyone is effectively always on the market.
Right. Wonderful. And guys, for those people who are out there listening right now, I guarantee you this is money in the bank for you. This
Yeah,
is money in the bank, and it can if you start young, this is millions of dollars over the course of your career. Good career
yeah,
hygiene, so important. Open a doc, write stuff down. I like to advocate for the master resume. Make it pages if you want.
yeah,
It's worth it.
that is absolutely it. And maintaining that repo is what vitally important. And then I
Yeah,
think I would also say to folks like try and build out a online presence that you can like that can basically be a little bit of a hedge.
yeah,
So like your like I'll give you an example. There people can't push you around as much if you have clout. And
right,
I've seen a lot of like really top professionals that I've spoken to that are like, yeah, I'm building out a brand. I'm starting to build out an audience, not even because I'm especially in love with being a creator, but it's like it's career security, right? It's like, hey, I have this big network. I have these pool of folks. They're activated. I can talk to them. They perceive me as an authority for something. And so if I'm ever in need or if I ever have to like leverage that, I have that in the bank, right?
right.
So it's like, what is your career IP and what is effectively your professional IP or kind of collateral or assets that you can then deploy?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you approach networking with a giving first attitude, you're never going to feel cringy. You're never going to
Yeah.
feel, you're never going to feel like I'm that person who just asked because you gave first.
Right. Totally. And you didn't ask when you were on your knees. And I think this is something people forget because most people only think of networking when they're screwed.
Right.
And that is frankly the wrong time to like to use your
Absolutely.
network. Your network should be warmed up, ready to go. And the way to do that is to engage with people. I mean, fundamentally, the theory of relationship is the theory of multiple touch points. And the more touch points you can have, like it just scales linearly. If you
Yeah.
just think about the people in your life that you wouldn't even like say, oh, this person's a close friend, or maybe feels like a close friend, you're just like, I met this person like 3 times, right? But
Right.
like 3 great touch points can bump someone up in your, like, personal priority queue over people they've known for years, you
Right.
know? So the
Yeah.
question is, like, how do you get 3 great conversations out of someone? And I think that is, like, like, and then that all of a sudden means that you're not just trying to think about it from the perspective of what do I ask in the first meeting?
Yeah.
The now the incentives are aligned and you're saying, "How do I get this person to care about me for 3 conversations?" Because I
Right.
guarantee you if you achieve that, then that person will do basically anything that you need them to that's within their power, you know?
You heard it here first, guys. Network today, not when you get laid off.
Yeah, yeah,
Start simple.
amongst other things. This was so fun, thank you.
Okay, so now,
Uh-huh.
Vrijen Attawar, what is your hot take?
Oh,
Give me a spicy one. I'm ready for it.
v
Do ba 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 do boo do a boo ba do boo boo ba do a do ba do ba do a do ba do ba do do do
Well, there you have it.
a do ba do
that
Guys,
there you go, as promised. I really hope that
awesome.
doesn't get, like, clipped and end up on, like, HR Twitter or something. Yeah, yeah,
All
please
right.
don't get me into
Well,
trouble.
you asked.
I personally think most people would agree, so
Definitely the candidates will agree.
yeah,
So, on that note, Bridget, thank you so much for being here with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure for me. And I hope
amazing.
everyone got as much value out of this conversation as I did.
Yeah, it was really fun. I encourage y'all to reach out, follow me, message me. Happy to be useful to folks. And yeah, please check out CareerSpan.
Absolutely. So, we will put all of the links, Bridget's links, how you can contact him and how you can test out CareerSpan in the comments. That being
Thanks
said,
so much.
bye bye.